Okay, good evening, everybody. At this time, we will open the special meeting for Planning and Zoning, Thursday, September 24th, 2020. Let's rise for the pledge, please. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. All right. So we will do the roll call. Commissioner Silver.
Present. Here.
Commissioner D'Aquila.
Present.
Commissioner Khoury.
Present.
Commissioner Prush.
Here.
Commissioner Cinto. Commissioner Garrity is here. Commissioner LeConte is absent this evening, and Commissioner Prush will be sitting in and voting if necessary in his stead. So we are here once again to continue 50, 65, and 58 Main Street. Applicants K&K Developers Incorporated. I'm going to waive the rest of the reading. We've done 4 times, and we will go right into this by handing it off to our attorney, Mr. Cordone, for his opening.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is James Cordone, Trumbull Town Attorney. Today is the September 24th, 2020 special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The meeting is being conducted pursuant to the Governor's Executive Orders 7B and 7I by video conference, teleconference, over the internet and telephone. The applicant is here in part, and the commission is here in part, socially distanced. Access and participation by the public is by video conference, teleconference only, pursuant to the governor's orders. The public may comment during the public comment section of the meeting by either Zoom or telephone. By Zoom, you may raise your hand electronically. Further instructions will be provided at that time. Please note that the posting of any comments on Facebook Live or any other online format will not be included in the record, and the commission will not see those comments. The agenda for this meeting was posted 24 hours in advance on the town website, along with all materials presented for this application. I would ask all commissioners and participants to please identify yourself before speaking for the benefit of those listening by phone only. I would ask the chairman to make sure that all votes are taken by roll call. Lastly, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we've been doing, it's working well for us. Let me go over what I think we're going to do tonight. So what we will do is we will hear from the applicant, and he will address any of the questions we left with, any of the changes that got made from the last meeting. Then we will go into questions and answers again from the commissioners that have them if they don't need them in between. Any further input from staff. Then at that point, we will be going to the public, which I do believe we should be able to get to tonight in part or in whole. Just as the past few meetings, we're going to do a soft close at 9 o'clock and a hard close by 9:30, depending on how the flow is. And if for some reason we're going to need another meeting, which is likely, just for everyone's benefit here today, the next meeting, should we accomplish all the tasks that I just described, should and most likely will be Zoom only, because the applicant will have presented all his documents, and the document flipping in person that we would need to do should be accomplished by this evening. So if in fact the public comment portion is interrupted and or the closure of the meeting and the deliberations need to begin, which we may begin tonight or we may begin at a separate meeting, that next meeting will be via Zoom, because we don't see a need to be here in public. Plus, now that school's in session, we have a much tighter window to be able to use this facility. So with that being said, any other input from commissioners before we hand it off to the applicant? Okay, hearing none.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Nuff, 147 Broad Street, here on behalf of the applicants. Our full team is available this evening, both in person or via Zoom. But in terms of responding to the questions and in the interest of getting to the public as quickly as possible, I'm just going to take you through all the changes. And but if there's questions that come up that involving other people's expertise, they're all available. But I think we can do this rather quickly. So since we met with you last time, you remember, Mr. Chairman, that one of the questions was whether or not your town engineer, Bill Moore, had an opportunity to review our drainage reports. He has done so. We have submitted a letter, originally dated September 22nd, now dated September 23rd. The latter letter, which I provided to you in hard copy this evening, is identical to the prior letter. It just provides some other information that you would have found in the drainage report, but wasn't found on that letter. So we just want to make it explicitly clear that we are complying with every possible stormwater drainage standard, report, statute, guideline, and we are reducing not only the rate of runoff, we are reducing the volume of runoff in every storm event, the 2, 5-year, 10, 100-year storm. So what that means is after the completion of this project, there will be less stormwater leaving the site than leaves there today. So
if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to stop you because I just realized there is staff input at the beginning of this that I probably should have went to exactly what you described. It makes it easier for all of us if we get the staff input, which coincides with what you're going to present. So, Mr. Moore, if you could take us through what you've accomplished in working with the applicant and their agents in between the last meeting and reaffirm or address all the points that the applicant just made and anything that he may have not gotten to yet.
Yes, the applicant is, their engineer, the BL company has provided me with all the documentation and backup material that I needed to review to make sure that we are 100% compliant with our stormwater regulation. They were very, very helpful in their support. They were very good to work with. Their numbers, actually, the portion that I had great concern about, they actually reduced volume by 15% in the change from the delta of the 25-year storm. The volume meets our regulation more than enough.
Okay. Anything else? No. Rob, do you have anything to add as far as any of the changes that were made that they're going to present tonight before they present them?
Mr. Chairman, I'll probably wait till they talk about their crosswalks.
Okay.
Just to.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. And I just want to thank Bill for his comments and thank Bill for his diligence in pursuing this. The only other thing I would point out is that we are reaching all these lowering of thresholds or lowering of the volume or lowering of rates using a very, very conservative baseline. So it's really great news for anyone downstream, and it's great news for the entire stormwater design. So that's the first thing we want to get out of the way. Number two is at the last hearing, we had told you that we would modify the intersection of the ring road and the main access drive. We have provided, while it was a computer generated imagery, we call it a sketch. So we submitted, and I think it's number one on the deck that we provided to Bill Chin, a fully dimensioned plan depicting the revisions to that median and that intersection between the ring road and the main access drive. And Bill, if you want to bring up number one, there's not a whole lot to talk about there, but certainly I just want to make it clear for the record that we have fully dimensioned that modification to the ring road. So what you see is making the median a little bit more slender and widening the approach as you head up the access drive to Main Street, enabling cars making that double left to do so in a much easier fashion. So that's the number two, and so that is not in the response memo. Then the balance of my comments, I want to refer to the memo that we supplied, the response to comment letter dated September 3rd, or actually reference to the September 3rd public hearing that we provided on Monday. The first question was from Mr. Silver. Will there be bollards or something similar to discourage walkers utilizing the path along Main Street from crossing the main site driveway near the path? And I think if Bill, if you can bring up number 4, that will depict so low plantings in that area so that pedestrians who are utilizing the new pathway, there you go, using the new pedestrian pathway, you can see sort of in a darker gray there, will be encouraged or prohibited to either make that left or make the right to use the main sidewalk along the main access drive to where there's a crosswalk, and then they can continue their stroll on the opposite side. So that's a response to Mr. Silver's comments, and we appreciate that in terms of the safety of the pedestrians.
Through the chair. Attorney Nuff, thank you so much for that explanation. I think it looks much better, but I thought my question was, maybe my memory's not quite right, but the question was whether you're gonna have bollards on that island on the Mall Ring Road.
No, and as a matter of
Can we get
fact,
to that?
you did ask that, and we
Yeah.
and we put that in there, and we thought that this is a more attractive and just as effective means of encouraging people to
Yeah, it very much is. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Now I'm going to challenge my own memory here. I thought we had a banter back and forth about retaining that. And you said it was unsafe, and then I said...
No, we're talking about a different one. No, so you're right, Mr. Chairman, but on a different issue. So, Bill, if we can go to, I think, slide number 3. If I can just walk to the screen, Mr. Chairman, I'll
go ahead.
speak loudly. So the area that you just saw the detail of, that was in response to Mr. Silver's comment, is your condition. And so you're going to be talking to Mr. Chairman about this crosswalk here.
Right, well, you're there, so you don't have to keep walking back
Sure.
and forth. I also talked about where your rectangle stops, right? With your crosswalk, your darkened, yes, that.
Yes.
We talked about your new project goes lower. And I said, it's like you ran out of ink. You should have continued the enhancement on the lower side as well. So did you intend to do that today?
Yes, I mean, we're getting to this. So that's in the memo, and we'll describe this. We have another plan that shows this
Oh, I'm
area
just
more
looking at
specific.
this coloration. I thought it might be there too. So you have another one that shows it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Because in my mind, that rectangle now had that other crosswalk still remaining, and it was a longer rectangle with 3 crosswalks rather than 2.
Gotcha.
Because we had talked about, it's been a functioning, safe crosswalk for 30 years.
Right.
Why are we eliminating it when, to Commissioner Silver's point, people are going to want to walk down and park in that overflow and walk straight across going towards the left at main entrance, so.
No, and we'll get there, but I want to tell you that we gave that a lot of thoughts and went through a lot of different iterations, and then we'll show you where we landed, you know, in a moment. I just thought for continuity's sake, it'd be better just to go through the memo as we submitted it. There's a question again from Mr. Silver. Is it possible to extend the walkway around the community, along the site's northern boundary? The problem is, even if you do that, it just sort of ends up in nowhere. You know, that's ending it where we're ending it, sort of in the northeast corner of the site, still allows people to make a safe transition from that walkway, if they want, over to the internal sidewalk system within the community itself. Mr. Corey asks, if a guest arrives at a gate and has a problem with access, is there a way to contact the community manager or other point of contact on site? There is going to be a manager on site 24 hours a day, but they're not always going to be available for everyone who's entering that gate. So guests have to be admitted by the person who they're visiting. And if for some reason they're unable to do so, then they, as we showed, John Spitz, our professional engineer from BL Companies, showed how we created that turnaround in each access drive to exit the site. We think that that's going to be a very infrequent occurrence, but the opportunity is there nonetheless. And then note, I skipped your question, Mr. Chairman. Will we maintain the existing southerly crosswalk at the Ring Road? So Bill, if we can go to number 2. Okay, so we're looking at a detail of the ring road and where the where the original crosswalk was located. You'll see that there is a crosswalk on the north or the top of that sheet, directly adjacent to the drive aisle that leads up to the residential community. That is the original crosswalk. That crosswalk is colored and stamped either asphalt or concrete. It will have flashing beacons, and there are bollards that will have lights that will illuminate the sidewalk that leads to that crosswalk. If you go further south now, there is another crosswalk that will be identical to that. The crosswalk that you had discussed, Mr. Chairman, was located closer to the main access drive, and so as drivers would come down that access drive, you get to that crosswalk very quickly. So we thought about that a lot. We considered consolidating these two. We didn't think that that was a good idea. So what we did, we simply moved the crosswalk sort of one parking bay to the north so that it could lead directly into the area where the sidewalk leads into the mall. And what this does, and so we're going to give it the exact same treatment as the original sidewalk or the original crosswalk, which is stamped asphalt concrete. There will be flashing signals there as well, and also lighting bollards to guide pedestrians to that crosswalk. So we think that it has the advantage of sort of creating a safe pedestrian zone so that drivers going in either direction along the ring road are going to be very much aware that this is a perhaps potentially heavily utilized pedestrian area. So, we appreciate the comment from last time of wanting to keep that sidewalk in that location. We took that comment to heart, as we have done with all of your comments, and decided that it was best to move it a little bit further north to help give drivers a little bit more time to acclimate, and then also to create this zone of safety for pedestrians. And Bill, if you can go to...
Now, let's not leave yet. I understand everything you said.
Yep.
I'm just worried that it's now created and left behind the same issue I brought up with why it should be made permanent. By moving it farther north, it's less of an incentive for those that are coming down the hill or leaving that parking lot
No,
to walk up.
No, let's go to number three,
when
because...
we were over here, right? When we were at last month's, the crosswalk was farther south,
You're right.
right?
Yep.
So you've moved it farther north, but that walkway coming down the hill and coming around the curve and people leaving that parking lot are still going to exit where that old cross path was.
Here's the advantage of moving it to the north. And we haven't moved it that far to the north. So I think the old one was in this direction. There's not a really good landing spot in this area for pedestrians.
I'm only talking about the landing spot that's been there for 30 years and worked.
But if we anticipate an increase in the number of pedestrians, it made sense to move it just one parking bay to the north, which is approximately 60 feet or so, to the north, where they can have direct access to the sidewalk that leads into the mall. Because otherwise, you're just sort of left in the parking field with less of an opportunity to have a fully protected sidewalk like we're creating here.
Is there another
I
slide?
mean, I want to be clear. We don't have a particular objection to keeping it wherever. We just wanted to take the intent, we wanted to take the intent of your comments and facilitate pedestrian access to the mall from those who might be coming down this sidewalk from the residential community or from that satellite parking lot or from people who may be arriving via bus and getting off at Main Street, that they still have that ability, because either you walk these 60 feet on this side of the ring road or these 60 feet on this side of the ring road, and we think people are going to just walk the extra 60 feet on this side rather than that side to access that sidewalk.
Yeah, again, the mall is large. And we were talking about last time, the highlight, if, you have a main entrance here, that's what we're talking about, the people that come down and come across. And we also talked about the vegetation that you're improving on this side should come all the way down to balance out your project, because you don't want to just decorate here. Do you have another slide that's doing that, or that's not done here either?
No. So this is it. I mean, we are creating that that zone for pedestrian safety, via the crosswalks on the north and the south side. Yes. Could someone walk down the sidewalk and say, "I'm going to Target," and there's very few cars out? I mean, they might make that movement, but we felt it was important that we move the sidewalk just a fairly tiny bit, 60 feet or so to the north, so that drivers coming around that turn have a longer amount of time to see that there was a pedestrian in that location.
I got it. So when the commissioners deliberate, we'll see what their main interest is. But you used a different phrase than I did when you're talking about a safety zone here that you're highlighting with the new vegetation. I think from my perspective and what I've heard from the commissioners is we're talking about a beautification of the area, not just a safety zone. So like I said before, this should come as close to the end of your project as possible. It should be twice as long as it is, because when people enter the mall, they're going to see that enhanced beautification and know that it's all part of this new development that's there, not this 100 feet in a 200-foot stretch.
So
that's what I was describing.
So would you object to keeping the sidewalk where it's currently, where we currently propose it, with some enhanced landscaping on the west side of the ring road?
Which sidewalk are you talking about? You can go show me.
Just so it's clear on the record. I just want to be clear. So if we maintain the sidewalk or the crosswalk in this location.
Yeah, I'm not talking about removing that.
No, right. So are you asking us to somehow enhance some landscaping in this area?
Yeah, take your pen and go north. Take your pen and go high for the next 1.5 feet. Go, keep going. Now stop. I want you to replicate what you just did underneath. I want you to replicate all of that, go down. I want it to be one large project that beautifies that whole area. It's a mirror, not just that 100 feet.
So down to this.
Or maybe even past that. That's one of the things that we should talk about. What makes sense? Does it have to be the whole curve? Should it go to the ring road? However,
Okay. I just want to make sure we're defining what the issue is, and the issue is the sidewalk, and you're okay with that in this location.
Now, there's two separate things. One is the crosswalk that I initially wanted to stay.
Yep.
And you half agreed with it and moved it north. So it still leaves the remnant of why I wanted it to stay in the first place. The other part of the same discussion was I wanted you to double the volume on the mall side of your beautification enhancement of the islands. It should be underneath. So it's an entire package of beautification on both sides. Here's our development, and look how nice we made the mall. It's one package.
Gotcha. Okay, understood. I understand. That concludes our responses to all the questions that everyone had from the last time.
Okay.
So perhaps while the public is speaking, we can confer with everybody and see if I can give you a response.
Okay, but while we're still here, I'm going to go around and see what the commissioners
No,
have.
it's fine. Happy to.
Go ahead, Mr. Silver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Attorney Nuff, two quick things. One, I didn't see an island on the new crosswalk. Did you? You said it was identical?
Problem is the cross section in that area of the ring road isn't wide enough to give that landing spot like we do in the original crosswalk or the first crosswalk.
Okay. And then the other thing is with the path, and I appreciate your response on it, but I saw that path in the front as an amenity to the people who live there, right?
Yeah.
So I would want to see it, make it as close to circular as possible, right? So people can, you want to go out and do a mile walk in your apartment complex, you can do that and it's a full circle rather than having to navigate your way through the parking lot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mr. DeQuilla, you're on.
For clarification, Attorney Nuff, this is Commissioner DeQuilla. Is the chairman recommending to keep the location of the previous side crosswalk?
Yes, so let's label them the north crosswalk, which is the crosswalk that we always have proposed.
Yes.
And then we now have the southerly crosswalk, which is a relocated and enhanced crosswalk that was, still exists near the curve where the main access drive turns into the ring road. So we're proposing to move that crosswalk. Originally, we were proposing to eliminate it altogether. And now we're proposing to keep it, but to relocate it further to the north to give drivers more time to see that crosswalk as they make that turn from the main access drive into the ring road.
And again, Mr. Chairman, are you proposing to keep the location of the existing crosswalk there?
Yes.
Okay.
So
My
let
biggest
me, let's do this together and then I'll give it right back to you.
Sure.
What we haven't run to ground yet, he did the artful, I hear you, yes, yes. But we haven't run it to ground, which is, it looks nice. It's an enhanced project. It is an improvement by them adding that new crosswalk in the center that meets with the sidewalk. That's good. I'm not asking to remove that or change that because that's an enhancement. What I am talking about is the original reason that you're pointing out, the existing crosswalk, which is lower, which is at the bottom of the walk downhill, at the exit ramp, at the exit of the overflow parking lot, where people will be accustomed to and probably drawn to still walk across there. So we still have to talk about that. I'm not saying to move the one they've moved up. At some point, we as a commission are going to talk with them and ourselves to say, do we want a third one there now that goes across where they've become accustomed to walking across?
My only concern, Attorney Nuff, is the line of sight. When you're coming, I guess that's west.
Hey, Bill, can you put up number 3?
When you're coming west on the entry road, you don't have an adequate line of sight to that first crosswalk, to the existing crosswalk.
We agree.
And I have a real problem with cars swinging around that curve and not anticipating somebody crossing that road.
We agree.
It's a safety issue.
We agree, which is why we moved it one parking bay to the
And
north.
I support your movement where it should be.
Okay.
Any other questions for them?
No, that's it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioner Curry?
It is on.
I understand your response to my question, but
You gotta talk louder, Tony, into the mic.
I understand his response to my question, but I'm not satisfied with it. That's my only comment.
Which question?
About whether or not there's going to be a manager or someone available 24/7 in case a visitor comes to a gate and the gate doesn't open.
I didn't say, I simply asked if there could be if someone got to the gate and there could be,
Microphone.
they were stuck, and there could be a phone they could call with a camera. And so I understand your response, but I'm just not satisfied with it. So that's my only comment.
No, we're with them, Commissioner Corey, but, keep in mind that the combined experience of both Scott and Leonard and their companies of doing these types of communities literally around the country, many of which are gated, the vast majority of which are gated, have a lot of experience doing this and have never encountered an issue.
I'm not satisfied, so that's all I'm saying.
Okay,
Because
all right.
I've been on the Merritt Parkway where it backs up and it gets stopped and I feel like I'm gonna get killed, and it was fixed. And these are the things that I'm very concerned about as a resident. When you're driving around, you talk about people crossing it. I'm talking about coming down the Merritt Parkway, it's 75 miles an hour, and traffic's backed up. And that's why I'm not satisfied. That's my only comment.
Okay.
I don't argue with you about it. but
No,
I'm
no,
not
no,
satisfied
and
with the response.
I don't want to argue with you either. I would only
Yeah.
point out that there is a right-hand turn lane there, so to help facilitate
That was
that.
my only comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Cinto? Anything? I don't think he heard. Anything? You're good? Yeah, all right. Commissioner Prush.
I actually agree with Mr. DeQuilla on this walk, if we're talking about this, but I just had one question so I understand it. There's a continuation. You move the existing walk, I think I found further a little bit to the north,
Yes.
okay? And it hooks up with another, that's a new walk that heads toward the mall between, maybe it's the garage or maybe it's
Yeah, yeah. It heads toward the,
that little spur. Yeah, you've got it. Yeah.
yeah, the mall entrance where Cheesecake is.
Okay. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to move the walk there for that reason. Then to just leave the only one. Now, if you want to have three, okay, but I don't think three, one after the other, is such a good idea either with traffic coming around. So I agree with moving the crosswalk up, since we have so much more development going on than just that overflow parking area. So I don't really have any questions, just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. LeBrandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you were to move the sidewalk to location as you're proposing right now, would you move the steps from the parking on the property further north as well?
No. So no, I mean, the steps have always been the same location. The original location of the crosswalk was right there. And then after long discussions with the police department, they wanted the crosswalk to move north to be directly adjacent to the driveway that leads from the ring road into the community from west to east. Mm-hmm. So that's why we nudged the original crosswalk to the north a bit, and then obviously have added the second southerly crosswalk, again moving that one to the north.
Okay. And proposed crosswalks, I know there's a refuge island in the middle, but are these crosswalks going to be raised? Because the amount of traffic right when you're coming with the in and out entrance and with the ring road entrance and out pedestrian entrance, I feel that this should be kind of isolated and raised a little bit.
No, so we're not proposing raised crosswalks. Obviously, it creates a real maintenance issue, and likely wouldn't survive the first winter. But obviously, once you get to the crosswalk in this raise, and candidly, it's too late at that point. So that's why we're doing the treated sidewalk, whether it's stamped concrete or stamped asphalt. There will be the flashing beacons at both crosswalks. And then, as I said, the light bulbs as well, which I think even on their own will help create some anticipation for drivers to know that they're in the pedestrian zone.
So, thank you for that. So we're, the chairman was talking about, I think, uniformity and transition into the mall property here. So, this area is going to be all updated, and then it's almost going to be like the end of the line, the border, from the residential to the retail mall property. We're really looking for something transitional here. The parking garage on the top there is very, I'd seen better days, I'd say. So I really think that, we're talking about zoning, and you never want to have one zone and you could visually see the separation of one zone to the other zone. You want it to melt and transform together. And here I kind of see that this boxed in area is going to be beautiful, well designed, and then the area to the west is going to be a little outdated in terms of lighting and landscaping as well too. And I know that's part of the project, but not really part of the project.
Understood.
Yeah, and I'm just, I'd like to see something beyond there, and I know maybe I'm pushing the envelope a little bit, but
so when you say beyond there, you're talking about as you walk toward the mall. So
as you walk toward the mall,
extending to the west,
because you're going to have all this beautiful lighting and landscaping, and then you're going to see the parking garage top there, which has no landscaping and barely any islands there. So you're going to know this is new, and there's not really you have to stay within this lane to look at the really well thought out design, updated things, and don't deviate from that, or else you're going into an older underutilized area. But again, I just hope that there's discussion about that in the future, I don't know if there's discussion now. I know I'm going beyond what is proposed here. I just wanted to put that out there a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing is that once you get to these locations at the end of the crosswalks and connections to the entrances to the mall, is there going to be bike racks as well in those locations? Is there room for that?
Bike racks at the entrances to the mall?
At the entrances to the connection that these sidewalks are taking.
I mean, we hadn't proposed them, in that location. I don't know that there's sufficient room or candidly how much they would be utilized. I mean, as you indicated, there is bike storage in each residential building. I don't know, and I can find out once at the break or when we go to the public, whether there's bike racks directly adjacent to the mall entrances. But my guess is you would just, put your bike near the mall and not just leave it near that crosswalk.
Okay. All right, and the rails that are going along the retaining wall to the entrance, those are going to be, again, this is landscaping, powder coated black. They're not going to be.
Yeah, let me check with Wayne during, when we're doing public comment. I can give you the details of what the landscaping treatment is along that driveway.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make the point that, we have to, you're putting in all this great work in this location, and we have to make it so people actually utilize it. The goal for this is to not have people in the residential development drive their cars to the mall. That should be their second option. Their first option.
No, and we agree. And by the way, we're grateful for the input from the commission to enhance the connectivity. I mean, that was always a goal, and we know that from 2 years ago, and that was a stress point that the commission made very clear to us 2 years ago. We did our best when we submitted the application. The commission had some good suggestions and made it better with the addition of the second crosswalk. So I think in terms of connectivity, as well as the addition of the fully ADA compliant access, I think we've done everything we can literally physically do in terms of creating a safe and comfortable and attractive connection between the residential and the mall.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had the presentation, the modification, and questions and answers. If there's no other specific questions from the commissioners, I think we are actually ready to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Commissioner
D'Aquila.
D'Aquila again to Attorney Nuff. The SP1, which is the site plan,
Right?
I think it's up to revision 3. On revision 2, you show cars turning left from Main Street going north. And I think on revision 3, it's eliminated. Is that true?
Yes, we have completely eliminated the left-hand turn from Main Street into the main entrance into the community.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just a really quick observation. I just wanted to underscore and agree with the town planner. You make some such great points. One about the transition and the uniformity of the enhancements of the sidewalk and the crosswalks down to the mall building. I think that's such an important idea. And I also agree with the idea that, if people are driving to the mall, then we as a community, and perhaps you folks as developers have failed, right? I mean, if it's mixed use, you should be able to easily walk. And you kind of answered that. You said it's ADA compliant and all those things. You did everything you can. But I just agree with that. I think it's a really important point. Early on, I think at our first meeting, you said that people going grocery shopping at Target might drive.
Right.
And I was thinking, and that may be because they have groceries, but even then, the idea that you go out on Main Street or you come through and go to the ring road and drive over, I don't feel great about that. I mean,
I mean,
That's
people
all. Thank
are going to behave the way they behave. If it's raining or snowing and cold or windy, they're likely to drive, as we all would. But if they're going there to go to Cheesecake for dinner, maybe for some other entertainment venue that may be coming in coming soon, or, you know, doing some, you know, modest shopping where they're not carrying bulky bags, then I think we've done everything we can to encourage the pedestrian experience from going to, from the community to the mall itself. I just think that if you're going to be buying 2 gallons of milk or whatever, you know, anything that's relatively heavy, you're probably going to drive. But, you know, certainly people will be encouraged in every possible way, you know, through the physical construction of that connection, to walk to the mall as opposed to driving.
Okay. So that being said, if there's no other questions, we have finally reached the portion of the evening where we will go to public comment. And public comment is via Zoom only. Remember, folks, anybody who's watching on Facebook, there is no public comment from Facebook. It is only via the Zoom logon or call in. So if anybody from the public has any questions or comments, either for or against, that they would like us to hear, please electronically raise your hand and you will be called on and brought into the meeting.
Star 9 by phone.
It's, if you're on a telephone call in, it's *9. So we'll give it a couple seconds. I know there was a lot of conversation in the whole town. This is the time to make your comments on the record, if anyone's out there listening. Okay, so is there anybody here? I think we have a town representative here, and anybody out in the public can still raise their hand. You'll still be called on. The public comment is still open for right now. Is this all of them?
It might be up here a while since I get to take my mask off. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the time tonight. I'm Rena Bakalar. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development for the town of Trumbull since April of 2016. I'm before you tonight just to lend a little perspective on how this proposed project can impact the mall property, some of the businesses in the mall, and other goals that we have as a community, like housing diversity. I also would like to compliment this commission for their foresight in adopting in 2018 a zone change to a mixed-use design district. It is 2 years ago or so, I believe in October, that rezoning occurred. It was a recommendation in the 2014 Plan of Conservation and Development that we look for a zone change for the mall property. And I am very glad, given all that's going on in the world, that we had as a team that kind of foresight to amend that regulation. That regulation really created an opportunity to make this property vibrant into the future, to create a live, work, play environment. I think that the development proposal that's before us for the 260 units of apartments are luxury market rate apartments. We have with us a development team that's proposing this that's extremely solid in my assessment. I have visited personally some of their other projects. I can tell you that some of them have been around Connecticut for quite a bit, and they are in good condition. I happen to know someone personally that lives in their Hamden development, so I have done a little bit of that kind of research, and I'm glad to say that we have folks here that care about the community. They are generational property holders. They keep their properties for a long time. They build for the long term in terms of the quality of their construction. And I do think that if this proposal is approved, we will have an improvement to the southern gateway of Trumbull. I think that the impact for the mall is essential right now. Investment brings other investment. If you have a property that's just devaluing, losing tenants due to the retail collapse, that no one is investing on a property, that property is going to continue to deteriorate. We saw that over in the Lindemann, Oakview Drive, Reservoir Avenue area. When I came here in 2016, that area was well over 50% vacant, deteriorating, and not producing as it should be for our grand list. We don't want that to happen to our mall property. A $60 million or so investment on that property will bring new vitality. It'll bring people to the site. It will bring additional customers in terms of the residents and their visitors. And it will allow us to attract other dynamic activity to that property. You know, folks have questioned whether there should be a plan and so forth. I can tell you that in December of 2019, when we redid the 5-year capital plan, as we do each year, and add that vision of what we want in terms of capital investment for the town, we added a request in there, or an item in there, to put some money toward a planning process like we've done in some other areas of town for that southern gateway. We then went in February or March, excuse me, to the Finance Committee and to the Town Council, ultimately for the 1-year bond allocation. And we have an approved allocation, at least from the town, for a planning process. And this live, work, play concept is going to be at the root of that. I've already started to talk with some of the staff. We will talk with the commission, certainly, with some of the property holders, and we will ultimately go out to the residents and others about investing in this planning process. And it really should be a world-class planning process. This property represents our largest taxpayer in town. It is essential that it remain dynamic and that it be an asset, not just to Trumbull, but to the whole region. It's a regional jobs hub. It is our largest taxpayer. And I believe that the proposal in front of us is a step in the positive direction toward that goal. You know, when First Selectman Tesoro and myself and our finance director sit with the rating agencies each year to talk about what they're going to assign Trumbull in terms of a rating, so that when we go out to bond and borrow, you know we have a certain percentage, we have a interest rate benefit from a high credit rating, right? And we went extensively, and we do every year, into economic development projects and so forth. And this year, for the first year since I've been here, and I've done this in other work before I came here, they asked for a second meeting with me. They asked for a second meeting specific to the mall, and they asked about this project, and they were very positive about the idea that, given all that's going on in the world of retail and so forth, that this town had already done a zone change and was already looking to convert into a live, work, play environment potentially. And they understood the project was not approved and it was in the land use process, but they liked the idea very much. So I share that piece of information because you may not have heard that before, but that's the reality of how people are looking at our sustainability for this property and for our town. You know, I have heard from individual tenants in the mall who really appreciate that we're looking to bring more people to the site. They have said that's essential. I've never heard one business that we've talked to approach to potentially come to that site say, I don't want the housing. But I have heard businesses say, we won't come unless it's a more activated site and a live, work, play environment. That's where we're locating in the future. So I also share that with you. I'm sure you've read that as you've researched what's happening with malls around the country. So I can tell you that this project, despite any service drain, and you heard some of that presentation before, even, you know, if we go beyond what was proposed, it's still going to produce significant grand list growth to this community. Moderate density housing, high density housing, this is a moderate density housing, is probably produces more per acre to the grand list than almost any kind of development. We'd have to put, I don't know how many office buildings, and by the way, I don't know that there's going to be such a strong demand for new office buildings for a while, given some of the changes going on in our world, but we'd probably have to put up 2 or 3 or 4 significant office building structures to even come close to contributing to the grand list that this development will, even after the service drain is calculated. You know, I also want to mention that someone who is somewhat politically active in our town wrote a letter to the Trumbull Times recently. And, you know, I appreciate everybody's position. We take seriously people's concerns about how any project impacts the community. No project is without cons, okay? Does it have more pros than cons? And can we do anything like this commission has already done, both in the zoning regulation and in some of the changes you've requested here since July? What can we do to mitigate those cons a bit, right? But in that letter, this person quoted Tom Madden, who's my counterpart and a wonderful and very, very effective economic development director in Stanford, and used it to their sort of benefit in the letter to say this wasn't sort of a good idea. Well, it's interesting. I was on the phone with Tom yesterday. He called me on another matter, and I said, you know, he brought up unsolicited. He said, you know, Trumbull is very smart to be looking at a live, work, play environment and the addition of housing at their mall. He said, you know, some other communities that aren't sure if that's a good idea are going to be in very big trouble. He said, you're doing the right thing. This is the way to go. This is what's going to activate the site and draw their investment. So I tell you that from my perspective, it is one piece of a much bigger challenge that we have there, but it's a positive piece that will help set the stage for re-envisionment of that property into whether it's a town center type concept or, you know, a mixed work play, vital, office, retail, restaurants, entertainment, housing, all mixed in an attractive sort of village style. Whatever that's going to be, that will come out in the planning process in the future. But this step is essential, and I support it, and I support it not just from an emotional place, but from a practical place and from the research I've done and from the input I've had, not just from Tom Madden, from other colleagues. So thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you for listening to my economic development perspective, and thank you again for the wisdom and the foresight that you had in 2018.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, could I ask Director Bakalar a question? Would you support changing the name of Trumbull Center from its current location?
It's off topic, off topic. It doesn't
She
relate
brought
to
it
this.
up.
It doesn't relate to this. It doesn't relate to
The
this.
town center concept, we can talk about all that in the planning process because I think it's important for us to discuss.
Yeah. This is an
I'm trying
important-
to make sure it works. We want to have
Understood.
focus our attention on this particular property,
Right.
including the mall.
Right. So I think all of that should be on the table for discussion in the planning
Thank you.
process. Thank you, Commissioner.
Anything
Anyone
else?
else?
Nope, we're good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, is there anybody else from the public who wishes to make any comments? Do we have any hands raised, Mr. Chin? No? Okay, so at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break because staff is preparing the letters that are going to be put into the record. So we're on break for 5 minutes. If you want to put the sign up, and gentlemen, 5 minutes. Rob. Okay. We ready? We're on? Okay, so we're back on the record, and we are still in the public comment part. If there's anybody who wants to raise their hand now before we close it, and while we're waiting to see if anybody else chimes in, they'd like to speak from the public. Right now, we have letters that were submitted from the public, both in favor and against the project, and Commissioner Silver will address those for the commission.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we have 13 letters from the public that are opposed to this project, and I will read the names but not the letters. The first one is Dawn Marie DeCoco. Second one is Grace or Mirando. Third is from Regina Burns. Fourth is from Tracy Vonick. Do you want the address or no?
No, their names in it.
Fifth is from Laura Citarella. Sixth is from John and Jen Burke. Next is from Mark Mikhail. And we have Patricia Kelly. Cindy Penkoff. These are all opposed. Suzanne Byrne and Mark Chandler. Janelle C. Volpicelli. Second one from Tracy Vonick. I'm not sure if it's the first one or not. Sharon Ferrante is the last letter that we're entering into the record as opposed to this project.
Right, as Commissioner Silver just said, for everyone at home and here, these letters are part of the record and the applicant and others have copies of them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing, we have a petition from 34 tenants, that is retail outlets from the mall, who are in favor of this project. I'm not going to read them, but we have that and it's part of the record if anybody wants to see that. And now in favor of the project, we have 8 letters in favor. One is from Michael Barker. The next is from Sarah Trop-Pacelli. Another one in favor is from Steve Dincher. Next is Pat Borgeson. Next is Matt Karoglian. Then we have a letter from Ross Michael Kleist. A letter from Ruth Fontilla. And the last one is from Nicholas Lemay.
Thank you. And in case we didn't say before, those letters have all been posted online as well. So at this time, I'm going to ask one more time if there's commissioners that have any questions before the applicant goes into his synopsis. Mr. DeQuilla, you said you had another question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Attorney Love. I have 2 areas of concern, and I have solutions for both those areas. At least my solution. The first is under the concept of ADA requirements, or American with Disabilities Act. The proposed concrete steps leading to the ring road is simply not ADA compliant. I'm sure you agree. This route is not accessible. And it's also my understanding that the applicant's alternate accessory route that goes around the perimeter is also not ADA compliant. Let me just explain why. It's my understanding after a large number of years of researching ADA rules that the proposed accessible route must coincide with or be located in the same area as a non-accessible route. The applicant's alternative route circles the periphery of the housing complex property is an unreasonable 1/3 of a mile traveling distance. When you have a walker, that's unreasonable. So my proposal will be that the applicant should provide the public with free shuttle service between the housing complex and with both the public bus stops on the ring route and on the mall entryway, which is about another, it's a total distance. When you add the 1/3, it's about a half a mile one way. To round trip, it's a mile. And it just doesn't. So therefore, shuttle service, which is not going to cost you a lot of money, is proper and reasonable. The second one is a little bit more complicated. and that is in the area of pickup and drop off of school children. Potential buses servicing the following schools, and I'm going to name all the schools because it's important that there's just a large number of schools that the Trumbull Public Schools District provides transportation to. It's the elementary schools in the Trumbull Public School System, it's the secondary or middle schools, it's the high school, and private schools, Christian Heritage, Interdistrict Discovery Magnet School, St. Catherine's, St. Joseph's High School, 6 to 6 Magnet, St. Teresa's, and technical schools, Bullet Haven, Platt Tech, and OBrien. And then we have Trumbull's Early Childhood Education Preschool, which is commonly known as Tech Ed. And then there's the possibility of Trumbull's TLC. And then we have REACH, which is at Madison. And then, but more importantly, we have door-to-door service required. Any student who is placed on a planning and placement team for special education and any student with special mobility needs will have door-to-door service. Unfortunately, it is my understanding that the school buses operated by the Trumbull Public Schools are not permitted on private roads similar to this application. This restriction will not permit door-to-door transportation. Lastly, Trumbull Public Schools policy requires bus stops to be within the line of sight to parents of kindergarten children residences. My suggestion to you, Attorney Nuff, is to go back to your applicant and see if you can make the two perpendicular roadways, the east-west, north-south, into public roads, maintained by the town. That way we can get school buses, we can get door-to-door services, we can resolve all of those problems. Very simple. And all we're dealing with is snow removal, and I don't think the town would object to that.
Mr. DeQuilla, I'll let you go as far as you could go until that statement. Okay? We cannot ask the applicant to go back and donate land to the town when we have no reasonable assumption that A, the town wants it, needs it, or could accept it without a year's worth of planning and redesign for town equipment to go through. This is a private property, private development that is being presented under regulations that allow it, and they're here to present their plan to say, I meet your regulations. We cannot, at the 11th hour, invent new regulations and stipulations to hand them to go backwards to meet. You can't do it. Next question, please. Next question.
No, wait a minute. I do not accept your reasoning.
Well, you don't have to. Next question.
No, just a moment, sir. There is statutes that require door-to-door service.
Right.
And we cannot allow the buses to go onto that property.
The
So
entrance.
therefore, we'll be
I
in
understand
violation
what you
of,
said.
excuse me,
The
sir.
entrance to the
I
private
have the
property
floor.
meets it.
Just respect that. We cannot allow the school district to violate state law.
Okay. So one of the things you have to understand is how they're meeting that. And I don't think you are by making those assumptions. The fact that it is a high-density development with a closed gate, that is the entrance door for legal circumstances for the bus to come up and meet it. It happens in all the high densities that are private properties where buses are not allowed because of liability issues. This is not the first one. They are not the first ones to do this or try this, nor in this town. So when the buses pull up, they are meeting the door-to-door by circumstance of not being allowed on private property. Buses are not forced by that statute to be on private property. I understand what I'm saying. We can't create new law, new regulation. That's why I asked you to move on.
Anyway, I would like an answer, sir.
If the Trumbull School District wanted to permit buses to enter onto private property, we have no objection to doing that. But we also have no interest in deeding or dedicating the private roads that are gated at the commission's request and the police department's request to the town. We believe that we are fully ADA compliant with regard to the pickup and drop off of school children. And that, but if for some reason, we've been talking to Don Perkins for the past several years, if for some reason the town wants to make an exception to pick children up on private property, we have no objection to that. I don't think they'll make that exception, but we don't have any objection to doing that. But we also have no interest, just for the reasons the chairman said. There's no other multifamily community that allows school buses, or school buses will go onto that property to pick up school kids. They will go to the main driveway where it intersects with whatever road is on, and the school buses will pick children up there. It's no different from Gorham. School buses cannot get down Gorham and make a U-turn and come back. Those kids who live at the end of Gorham, whatever their situation, need to come all the way up to Main Street. And we're obviously far, far closer than the houses at the end of Gorham. So, I mean, the answer is we're not going to make our roads public. They're private for a reason. I think they're private because the town would prefer them to be private. We will maintain them, we will gate them, and there is adequate provision for school children to get to the main driveway where school buses will pick them up. And if for some reason the town of Trumbull wants to make an exception with regard to our development, unlike 10 Trumbull and the Royce and all the other multifamily communities, then we're happy to allow them to do so. With regard to the ADA compliant sidewalk, I mean, originally we did not have an ADA compliant sidewalk. And I don't know if it was you, Mr. Quilla, but to someone's credit, they brought that issue up and we added that ADA compliant sidewalk. I am confident in the professional engineers at BL companies and their interpretation of the ADA probably on a daily basis that sidewalk does indeed comply with all requirements of the ADA. Frankly, we are not going to offer shuttle service. We don't think it's necessary. Leonard Glickman started out this whole presentation, the whole hearing, talking about renters by choice. And renters by choice covers a lot of ground. And what he was referring to is they're not renters by need. They're choosing to rent for whatever their life circumstances are. But that also applies to all of their life circumstances. Someone may choose to live in Trumbull or Fairfield or Monroe for lots of different reasons, whether it's financial or their commute. Someone who is handicapped may choose to live here because there's elevator buildings. There's easy access to the mall. They can get a parking spot directly adjacent to their building, a dedicated parking space directly adjacent to their building, and they can use the elevator to get to and from their apartment. So we can see, I think this is a very ADA friendly environment, but if for some reason they decided they didn't want to live here because getting to the mall would be more difficult. I mean, you lived at the Royce and were handicapped. You'd have to get into your car. They certainly still have that ability, but we're not going to provide a shuttle service for, I'm assuming, the relatively few folks who would be handicapped to get to the mall. I mean, they certainly would be encouraged to do so in a variety of ways, but we're not going to provide shuttle service. So there were some other questions that came up prior to the break, Mr. Chairman. I just want to address those very quickly. The town planner, Rob Labrandy, had asked about what is the treatment for the driveway from the ring road up to the multifamily community, and that will have a guide rail that is a timber guide rail similar to what you see on the Merritt Parkway, which is very attractive. There will be a fence, of course, to prevent children or anyone from falling down off of that off from that area. And I understand you have a preference that'd be black and not the typical gray chain link, and we're happy to make that accommodation. Bill, if you can bring up slide number 3 again, I think. And this goes to Mr. Silver's point about the pathway, and we talked to the engineers from BL during the break, and just let me approach this to make it a little bit easier. So just to remind everyone what Commissioner Silver was asking about is, so we added this pedestrian path along along Main Street, and he had asked whether it could come along to parallel the parkway from east to west. And the problem is we have a very narrow pinch point in this area in our property line with the state right of way, and the area right along the property line is actually very steep. So if people want to, go for a circuitous, route, and in the evening after dinner, they certainly have the opportunity to come over here, come to the sidewalk, come back over here, come down, around. They can also go down to the staircase. So there's lots of different opportunities to navigate around the entirety of the multifamily community. It's just in that one area, it's just unsafe to do so because of the grade just off of the property line. And then, Mr. Chairman, to your point regarding the landscaping, no, Bill, if you can keep it up, I'm sorry. Let me go back. So, part of the issue, Mr. Chairman, I know that you wanted the similar treatment in this area that is here. I mean, there are landscaped islands here. I think part of it is just, frankly, just this plan, because this shows some enhancements. But we are absolutely happy to take as a condition of approval to further enhance the landscaping in these areas. We certainly don't want to put crosswalks here because we don't want to encourage people. We want them to use the crosswalk here, but we're more than happy to, add landscaping, enhance that landscaping. I mean, as you probably know, the landscape island down this area is actually very robust, very attractive, but we're more than happy to take it as a condition of approval to improve the landscaping in those areas that you had mentioned earlier. But we stick with our position that it's a lot safer to have that southerly crosswalk in the proposed location as compared to the existing location.
Mr. Corey.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, please don't take this as being adversarial, but I don't believe the issue was brought up at the 11th hour. I mean, I brought it up right from the start, even when this regulation went in. And I agree with Commissioner DeQuilla that there should have been a cul-de-sac part of this so that the buses could get off Main Street. And I even asked for a detailed assessment of the number of students that get picked up on Main Street as compared with a large number. And with all due respect to Attorney Nuff, I was not satisfied with that answer either. So I just want, for the record, I do agree that that would have been the only acceptable solution to the bus issue.
What solution is that?
To have a public cul-de-sac where the bus could come off the Main Street, pick up, and then go back on. So I'm not trying to create consternation for you, but I don't think this was brought up at the 11th hour. I brought it up when this regulation went through, and I brought it up early on in this hearing. So,
No, I do recall you saying, having concerns about the bus stop. I do recall that from the very beginning, absolutely. And I recall the answers, how children are already picked up on Main Street every day there, on both sides. It happens every day. So this would be just one more stop and what was already taking place. What I didn't hear.
The difference was if, the only difference is that we had testimony that when there's a large amount of children, it could be up to a 20-minute delay in the stop. And that was brought up, and that was my concern has been right along. So I just, for the record, I wanted to say,
I don't disagree with that part. I do certainly agree that the bus stop is an important issue, whether it's there or it's going to be in the back and they come in and they drive around to make it safer. I think that's something that the bus company may end up working out. What I meant at the 11th hour was talking about transferring property to the town from the landowner. That hadn't come up.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. The bus stop was absolutely in discussion from the first day, and you are correct. I remember that.
And Commissioner Carter, the only thing I would want to say in response is with regard to either creating a cul-de-sac or a pull-off area, is that even if you created a pull-off area along Main Street, traffic would still have to stop on Interstate Law.
The cul-de-sac would be a different situation.
Okay, any more commissioners? Anybody from the public? Okay, at this time, the public comment portion is closed.
Just have a few comments, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we want to thank the commission and its staff and the entire town and Bill Chin in particular for, frankly, the ingenious solution to a hybrid Zoom meeting. Count me among those who were dubious when this was first proposed, but I would tell you it has gone better than I think any one of us could ever imagined. And so we, hats off to Bill and all his team for their ingenuity and their effort, because I know it wasn't easy. So, but certainly I think the process was well served by being here in person. We started the process of breathing new life into the mall over 2 years ago. That's when this commission approved the regulation and zone changes that we had requested. And in doing so, you answered the primary policy question of whether a multifamily community should be added to the mall. And the commission answered that question in the affirmative. That consistent with Stantec's recommendations, making multifamily a permitted use in the zone was in the best interest of both the mall and the town because of the dire circumstances confronting both bricks and mortar retail and regional shopping malls just arising from e-commerce. And look what's happened since. No one could have predicted, well, a lot of scientists did, but none of us could have predicted the impact of COVID, which has dramatically exacerbated the challenges the mall is facing. So while the commission resolved the policy question, we certainly have not shied away from the policy discussion. Stephen Floor has spoken eloquently about how the intervening 2 years has only made your decision even more vital to the future of the mall, and how this application and Scott and Leonard's substantial investment is the linchpin for the mall's future success. But at the end of the day, the question before you is whether the application complies with your special permit criteria. As we discussed in our compliance memo, the application, as we originally submitted it, absolutely complied. But in the same way, we're happy to talk about the future of the mall. We're also happy to listen carefully to every suggestion from all quarters of the town as to how we could further enhance the community. As I noted at the last hearing, neither you nor we were satisfied with mere compliance with the special permit criteria. We acknowledged and indeed appreciated the proprietary nature of the town's suggestions, that the town, like us, wants what's best for the mall. So we, and I mean the collective we, police, fire, EMS, your engineering staff, your staff, Rob and Rena, this commission, my clients, the whole development team, Wayne and Schmitty and everybody, made changes, large and small, that did the following: dramatically improved the pedestrian experience, improved connectivity to the mall, improved safety for both drivers and pedestrians, improved environmental impacts, improved traffic flow, both on the mall property and on Main Street, improved emergency access, and improved the site's aesthetics. As a result, not only do these changes further establish compliance with the special permit criteria, but they ensure that this is a community and experience that the entire town and the collective we can point to with pride. So on behalf of Westfield, Scott, and Leonard, we want to thank you for your thoughts, your diligence, and the extra time that you spent in holding these special meetings. We respectfully request your approval to afford them the opportunity to make a substantial private investment that will ensure the success of the mall and its central position in supporting the town's grand list. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I will take a motion to close the hearing. Mr. Silver, is there a second? Mr. Prush. All those in favor of closing the hearing, aye? Aye? Yeah. Mr. Prush?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. DeQuilla?
Yes.
Mr. Silver?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity is yes. The hearing is closed. So we'll take a motion in a second. So right now we have it about 20 to 9. At a minimum, I think this is going to take a half hour to an hour to deliberate, to come up with any amendments that we're going to put and any adjustments and staff's input. So I'm willing to begin now if the commission is. So what, let me just go around. The question is, do we begin to deliberate now? Because if we begin to deliberate, we should probably make every effort to complete the deliberation. Because if we do not, then we are going to have to reconvene and inevitably rehash things we've already said to get to a vote. So at a minimum, like I said, you guys can come up with your own opinions. We can talk about it, not just vote. I think we're looking at, 45 minutes to an hour minimum to get through this whole thing and any amendments and any discussions and input people have. So do we begin deliberations or do we adjourn and reconvene via Zoom just for the deliberations? Mr. Silver.
I'm totally fine with adjourning now and reconvening via Zoom for deliberations and taking that 45 minutes to an hour or more, fresh.
That's fine. Mr. DeQuilla.
I agree with Commissioner Silver.
So you want to adjourn. Mr. Corey.
I agree with Commissioner Silver.
You agree with them. Mr. Prush, you're voting tonight.
Well, I agree with Mr. Silver. I can do it fresh and do it all at one time.
Okay.
And, yes.
Mr. Cinto, you're in agreement with the rest of them?
Tom, you agree?
No, I'm not voting.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, I guess that says it. I will agree with the rest of you, and what I would say is we'll just begin the complete deliberations now. If anybody has any question that comes up between now and the next meeting, I would ask that you individually send a question to Mr. Lebrandi, and he will hold those question answers for a couple days and email back the entire commission any questions that have come up between now and the next meeting, so all the commissioners can see any question that was asked and the answer that was given, so that Mr. Lebrandi is not continually answering back and forth individual commissioners. So if anybody has a question, they can send it off, but I am instructing him not to continue with the answers until we all get them at the same time and give him a break, either at the end of a week or right before the next meeting, give us enough time to digest them. Mr. Cordone, any inputs before we possibly adjourn here?
I do not, no.
Okay, so. Yeah, I'm wondering whether we do this before we, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, the works, we would have the deliberation at a work session. So we could have that at a regularly scheduled meeting, we could have a special meeting, but it's just for the commission at that point. There's no further public input at that time, as you know.
Yeah, if we call a special meeting, do we have to declare the date right now?
No, we do not.
Okay, so I'm in favor of a special meeting again, especially seeing as we'll all be home or wherever we choose to log on from. It'll be less imposing to have to leave than also having to have such an important topic. We have spent individual meetings 4 times now to then mix it with another meeting. I think that we finish it in its own meeting is my choice. Is everybody in agreement with that? Yes? Everybody nodded for the record. Not a vote. Okay. Is anybody have their calendars for October 1?
Okay with that.
Yeah, might work. Maybe Everybody okay with October 1, 7 o'clock for Zoom?
That's a week from today.
Yeah, it's next Thursday. Okay, so the next special meeting to continue deliberations or begin the deliberations with a motion will be Thursday, October 1st, 7 o'clock via Zoom. Will be open to the public, but there'll be no more public input. It'll be just the commissioners deliberating in a work session. Okay? All right, again, thank you to Mr. Chin and everyone here. What's this? Katie, thank you, Katie. Great job. This was a unique opportunity to do live, in person, and Zoom. It was pulled off flawlessly. Everybody has given accolades. We thank you for all your support. I will take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Silver, seconded by Mr. Corey. All in favor, aye. Aye. Unanimous. Everybody voted. Thank you, gentlemen.